So basically, the situation of women, let's say for Gaza, especially for Gaza, is that like their human rights, like there is a lot of human rights that they can't have it because here traditions rule more than the politics itself, and uh, the narratives, these things are the ruling and organizing the women life. uh, there is a huge percentage of girls who finish high school and then get married because their parents want. So some of them like they want to go to college but they can't because uh, for example their grandfather says no, so the father has to listen to his father. So and other girls who actually graduate from college, they are prevented from getting a job here uh, because the girl shouldn't work because that's what tradition says. The man, he is the one who secured the house, so she just only should do the housework, cleaning, washing, and other stuff like that. For example, when it comes to traveling, uh, they lately had this law of that a girl who is even 30, not even after 18, 30, she has to get a permission of her father, let's say brother, husband, to travel. Otherwise, she will be prevented from traveling. This is example of our daily struggle, and even in the institutions, you can't find women who work in a high managerial positions. No, most of the women's work in a low management positions, and they don't get paid as they should be because they are women. So basically, they can't say anything. They just be quiet and just take the job because basically they are a huge number of women who works in Gaza. They are the households of their family, the supporter of their family. So basically they can't say no. And there is also a lot of girls like me who are volunteering, of course, but you can volunteer forever, but at least you have to like any organization should respect the volunteers who are works for their best, because we can't see any exchange of our effort. Of course we do it for the good, but sometimes we ourselves we have a specific needs that need to be achieved, and sometimes we don't get the respect that we deserve for volunteering. um, and of course there is violence. There is a lot of violence, gender-based violence, and there is home violence, and of course the law is not really helping. As you hear, there is a lot of girls get killed, and for example, by their father or their brother, but of course the law keep them in jail like for 2 months and then let them go. So basically the law is not in our side basically. And of course, when it comes to married women who get divorced and wants her children, she's also having a problem as well, because the law is not beside her. Sometimes they give the kids to their father, even thought he might be a criminal, or he can't raise the kids, but the mom can. There is a lot of things that is unfair for the women who live here or in Palestine in general. Uh, yeah. Is there any specific question?
So, are there any
Women,
women's campaigning groups in
yes,
Palestine?
there is a lot of organizations like there is Aisha institution who do a campaign for breast cancer. There is, I think there is a lot of I can't name them right now, but there is a lot of female feminist organizations who support them, but they are not enough because there are like 2 or 3 of them, and they're not really active as they should be. Yeah. I mean, if a girl was hit by her family and run out of the house, there is no place that can actually be as a shelter for her. We don't have that kind of shelters because in our community, the traditions can't allow the girl to like to sleep out of her in other places like other than her own home. So basically, I think the law and the police themselves are not so. Um, Actually, they're like they have agreement with the fathers or something. I don't know how to call it, but it's like a tradition. Tradition is in everything. It goes in everything. These narratives. So basically, no. Even if there is like civil organizations that they can do the big deal. They can do small stuff like awareness, maybe sessions to these women, or how to react to this violence. But basically, it's not really working. It's useless
Mm.
because these women need protection. That's what they need.
Mm.
I'm not sure. We don't really have a lot of Christians here, but no, I don't think it's the same with them. I think it's better. Yeah.
Mm. And we were talking about peace in our conference. Peace was the theme.
Yeah.
Is there any peace groups?
No. You mean peace with whom?
Well, peace for the ending of the war with Palestine and Israel for a peace settlement.
No. No, we don't have any kind of that in here actually, because I think everyone is against that because basically they just keep killing Palestinians every day. So they say, how are we supposed to do a peace while the killing is still going on both sides? So actually, no, we don't like really have that here. I
How is
think someone,
how
I,
is the killing going on?
what?
What sort of killing is happening now?
With the borders and everything, like if you heard about the Great March of Return, when they used to with the borders, you know about the Great March of Return, right?
Yeah, they marched to the wall, yeah, and
Actually, it was a peaceful thing, but they keep shooting kids in their head and stuff like that. It wasn't and a lot of a lot of the boys who are in Gaza lost their legs. It's not really cool, but a lot of when I go to the beach, I see like a lot of them sitting on the beach doing nothing actually. Some of them lost both of legs, while others lost one. Some of them get shot in the head and died. If you know, you can see the statics on the news. So I think it's a bit of complicated, the peace thing. It's really complicated here.
well, that's what we have to solve somehow. We have to get peace
Yeah,
between Palestine and Israel, and that's what my mission is. You can
yeah,
help. You have to help. um, mm, it's challenging.
it is. Yeah, it's really hard, to like convince people with peace. Yeah, it's challenging, yeah, but it's really hard to convince people while they still keep killing and do their things, all these crimes. It's really not easy, I can tell you.
Sure, sure. But the only thing we can do is convince ourselves. We have to start with ourselves, right?
Yeah,
Is can we find peace in our hearts, in our psyche, in our minds, in spite of everything?
we can. Yeah,
Well, that's the most
we
radical
can.
thing we can do. You um,
Yeah,
I mean, some people like to meditate. They find peace through meditation. Um,
I actually, yeah,
mm,
I do sometimes meditation. It helped me a lot with my depression.
excellent. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, have you learned any specific techniques of meditation or prayer? Do they help you?
I think the meditation music helped me a lot. And sometimes when I feel like really bad, I just sit in front of the sea, our sea. So yeah, it does help me. But I don't know. It's sad because after you do meditate and everything, you just collapse and get back again to the depression. It don't just go away. It's like temporary healing, but it comes back. I think it's related maybe to the place or maybe to the bad circumstances. I'm not sure, but that's what's happening with me.
I understand. Yeah.
Like you have all this energy to work, to volunteer, but actually there is no chance here or not enough appreciation. Like you want to see the world, you want to be active outside, abroad, but actually like you have this huge energy, but you can't just like use it or something.
So recently there was a plan for Israel-Palestine peace.
Yeah.
Trump proposed, and I wrote a
I,
critique comment. Did you read it? Did you read?
and I wasn't actually lately in this 2020. I wasn't into politics a lot because I had my own problems. But yeah, I think it was about giving Israeli some of the West Bank. Not sure, but
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
But they were going to give Gaza a port, to build a port and to build a railroad.
I think it was one of the conditions. Yeah, but they already said that like years ago, and nothing really happened. So not sure.
Yeah, so we have to keep
I
pressurizing.
maybe Yeah, but I think this plan means like there is a lot of people who will be kicked out of Jerusalem. Palestinian people will be kicked out of their homes.
Yeah, so it needed changing. I proposed changes to it. It needed to be changed. Trump is not very intelligent, and he wasn't. It wasn't a good plan, but it was better than nothing.
Yeah, it,
Start.
yeah, it was some kind of contribution. Yeah, but it wasn't really good. Yeah,
No, but we can take it and change it, and then that's it. That's the peace deal. That's what I've proposed. So I
yeah.
try what I can.
Yes, I remember. Yeah, you sent me something about your opinion, right? You wrote about articles about it.
Yes, I wrote a whole
Yeah.
critical commentary.
So actually, you work as in politics and something like that.
No,
Are
in
you like
science, political science.
Yeah, you once told me that you work in a college, maybe professor, something like that.
I have taught in universities, yes, and
Yeah,
I have my own university, the Green University that I run. So I'm a political scientist, a philosopher, and an
yeah,
academic.
that's a great achievement.
Well, I'm impotent compared to what needs to be done. I'm like Hercules. There are 12 labors, but I've got my legs blown up. I'm like your
Yeah.
boys at the beach. We can't do anything. So I feel, I'm trying
Do
to
you
do it.
feel like did you ever feel like exhausting of this thing, especially the Palestinian cause?
No, not really, because I have a great love inside for
Yeah,
everyone and everything. And,
yeah,
I follow all the spiritual teachings, Christianity, Sufism, Kabbalah, Buddhism. I believe they're all partly right. And as long as we love the heart, we are kept.
exactly. Yeah,
If we have love in our heart, we win peacefully.
yeah.
And I believe it can't come from us.
I wish, I wish, yeah. I just wish that everybody just convinced about it, but no.
Well, even if you
I'm
have two,
telling you because I live in this, so yeah.
but there must be like-minded spirits. Just find 3 or 4 other people that think like you. Do you not have women friends you can share with? Like, feel like you do?
They would probably say like, "What with Israeli? No." So I know, yeah, I already know their opinions because you can't like say that out loud here. But yeah,
So to talk of peace is seen as a heresy. You can't be friends with Israel.
Because I used to have a friend who she used to work with peace groups in Israel and here, and actually I think she and her boss was caught. I think so because I used to be with her, but um, I don't know. I stopped going because I had my own conditions, but I heard about it after a while, and I think they were caught or something. I think their organization was closed.
Ah,
So I think they were the only one here in Gaza.
I have a friend who's a minister of the Christian church from Scotland. I lived in Scotland, and he comes
Yeah,
to Gaza 3 times a year. He visits. I will get him to come and see you. He's a vicar in the church in Scotland, and he may have some contacts. Or, the Church of Scotland has a big centre in Galilee.
I can't hear you.
Okay, I'll introduce you.
Yeah, you said you had a friend in Scotland. That's all what I heard. Sorry.
That's fine. Yeah, I'll put you
Yeah,
in touch. I'll put you in touch. Yeah,
you mean with my traveling, or you mean in Gaza?
he comes to Gaza.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
he will visit you.
So is he coming soon or?
Um, I have to find out. I'm not sure. I'll let you know.
So what does he do in Gaza?
Uh, he is a um, Scottish vicar. He's a Christian who does charity work.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I can hear you.
And he's an academic. He was a professor at Glasgow University in Spanish studies.
Is he a professor like you in politics?
No, Hispanic studies.
Oh yeah.
Spanish. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah. So, anything else you want to say to finish? Any other last thoughts? Today is International Women's Day.
yeah.
Have there been any manifestations for the women of Gaza today? Any public
Uh,
meetings?
I can't hear. What was the question? Yeah, they do a lot of events in here. Yeah. So I think yeah, I think they did something, but they once did a bus, like they brought a bus with all over orange, all over it, color, the orange color for women, for calling for stopping the violence against them. It was an event that they do in the organization. Um, they do, they do events, but it's not like, yeah, like really active stuff, like outside people and how they do it. But yeah, they do events for women.
Okay.
Sometimes they just brought women to an open day in the beside the sea, violated women. It was some of the events that I witnessed, and some, like what they call it, more like I think it's more like mental healing for the women who were under the violence. They do like an open day for them so that they can get out all this negative energy by hosting them in a restaurant near the sea. Sometimes it's more like awareness workshops about how to defend yourself instead in front of the anyone who violent you. Um, what else? Sometimes I think it's about the breast cancer, more like also more like consulting. They do a lot of events in that day. I think it's only the civil institutions that they do that.
Okay.
Yeah, there is universities. Yeah, there is Palestine University, Al-Azhar University, Islamic University, and Gaza University, and Al-Aqsa University.
Okay.
And they're really good. Yeah. Yeah, they do have libraries. Yeah, and it's really good. It's they have a good books in there. My friend used to go there when she needed books for her master degree for her research, and no, it's really good.
Hmm.
No, I don't think so right now because I think they are now on electronic teaching, not in face to face because of the virus. But yeah, I used to go there when I was in college, in 2017. But then no, I didn't go.
Hmm. Right.
Yeah,
It's been very interesting talking to you. Thank
me
you.
too. It's my pleasure, actually.
Thank you for sharing. And
Yeah,
I, the women of Palestine get a better deal in Gaza, particularly.
inshallah. Yeah, me too.
Help.
I'm sorry. I sometimes I just can't put the sentence together. I'm
Thank
sorry.
you speak very well. Thank you, Layal.
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you.
Okay, so it's lovely to see you, Annalisa Derr. Thank you for joining us on this auspicious International Women's Day.
Thank
You know,
you for having me.
I'm glad you can join us from Seattle, place I know and love. And so I think it's very appropriate. You've been involved in women's spirituality, theatre, ritual. You're doing a PhD on all this. And you've been helping with the Mary Magdalene Studies Association as an assistant editor. So why is women's spirituality important to you? And why should International Women's Day not forget that aspect? That's really what my questions are to you.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here on International Women's Day. And so I think through my relationship with Mary Magdalene as a mentor, as a spiritual guide, um, she really for me teaches lessons of remembering, re-membering, and and basically reclaiming and falling in love with one's feminine embodiment. So we live in, these cultural constructs in which women and femininity have a lower status or somewhat devalued in a culture. And so I think that through women's spirituality, through Mary Magdalene, what we're learning is to is to um, add is to remember the certain values, right? Values of emotion, of feeling, of relationality, of embodiment. Remember the wisdom of body. We all have bodies. It's not something that's unique to women. But these are values that have been projected onto women and associated with women, and then both of them have been devalued, particularly in Western culture. So I think when we talk about, peace and women's spirituality, part of that is revaluing these attributes that have traditionally been associated with women and the feminine. And then as a corollary through that, the earth, like women and the earth have been associated for so long, so that when we hurt women, we also are, those are the same kind of techniques. And here, let me give a story to explain what I'm trying to say. So I'm reading a book right now called The Death of Nature by Carolyn Merchant. And she talks about the scientific revolution and interestingly enough, how Francis Bacon was sitting in some of these witch trial inquisitorial rooms. And what you find in some of his scientific writings is the same language used to interrogate the witches is used in his scientific writings and how he approaches talking about the earth and penetrating, interrogating, extracting information. So there's this sense of, and she also mentions that there was this major shift in, approaching the earth as an alive organic being to just a dead, inert kind of material thing to be extracted from. So the point is bringing I think actually remerging, reconnecting soul, spirit, soul, and body, because we have this fissure in Western culture, and part of goddess studies is about reuniting that, bringing soul and body back together, healing that Cartesian split of mind versus body, and honoring both, honoring bodily wisdom, honoring intellectual wisdom, intuitive wisdom. So I think that we can find, in the words of a friend that I just interviewed, Dr. Barbara Joy Laffey, when we connect with our inner feminine, these feelings of feelings, intuition, and deep listening into those needs and experiences that we're having, that will bring us inner peace, and it will also create an intermarriage with these masculine qualities such as doingness and rationality and intellect that will actually propel outer peace too. So it's inner peace creates outer peace. And again, circling back to goddess studies, we're trying to basically bring value back to women and these qualities typically associated with women. And I actually believe that that's really the goal for Mary Magdalene studies, whether people know that consciously or not, whether we're trying to reclaim her as a spiritual teacher, a wife of Christ, a priestess, a lover. I mean, all of these routes with which we examine Mary Magdalene are just about valuing women, valuing women's humanities, humanity, our sovereignty, our humanness. So that's what I would say with regard to spirituality. And I had some other thoughts coming in this morning. And I feel very strongly at this point in time that that the concept of private property is actually what creates a lot of discord. And that part of the concept of private property has been propertizing women and women's bodies. And so I'm not sure that we can find human peace or peace unless we really reframe our concept of private property. And so I feel like that's just kind of a long kind of tangent conversation that I want to go on, but that's kind of where I'm sitting at with peace right now, is questioning the values of private property, looking at it from a historical perspective and how that's been used as a means to control women and women's bodies and dehumanize us.
Can I add something, like a little comment?
Yeah, of course.
I've also always been very interested in this. I was brought up by parents who were really on the left. My mother was a kind of a bit of a Marxist scholar, a communist, and of course, communism as an ideal does away with private property. It was tried in Russia, it was tried in China, and with varying results, some of them disastrous. The communist Maoists did away with private property and shot all the people that were slightly rich. They went around terrorizing the villages of China. And in Russia, it was done pretty badly as well. And we know what happened in Cambodia. I mean, it was a catastrophe. So I'm a sort of, I've looked at this from both sides. I was very interested in the origin of the communist idea of abolishing private property, where it came from, because I think it's a brilliant idea, but I think they went about it the wrong way. They tried to
Definitely.
bring, like they did it through materialism and brute force. Whereas I think human beings are subtle and we're manifestations of the gods. And so I think the only way to do it is abolish the concept in our souls that like I own anything. If we get everybody to enlightenment, then of course the notion of private property is ridiculous. It's like I own the air. No, I don't. It's your air too. You're breathing it. I'm breathing it. So I looked into the origin of this whole fight about private property, the communist versus the capitalist split, as an intellectual historian when I was doing my degree, and I did my PhD on the Cold War, right? And I discovered something very interesting. Engels and Marx were very influenced by an anthropologist called Lewis Henry Morgan, an American, who studied with the American Indians, the Iroquois. And he discovered that they lived in a matrilineal kind of culture, in the longhouse culture, and they had no concept of private property. It just wasn't in their thought world. They shared everything. And that inspired Engels and Marx with their vision. It was a sort of utopian American Indian kind of concept. But unfortunately, because Marx was such a pedant, he'd been trained in German higher education to be really exact and mathematical, and he churned it through his brain. It came out as Marxism, which I think is, and of course he threw all spirituality out. He threw out the feminine whilst proclaiming, I mean, he just didn't acknowledge the importance of women in this. And
Right.
where in American Indian culture, I don't know if you've looked at it, but anthropologists have reported that, that concept of private property, it's not there. Everything is sacred for the use of the tribe, but that brings you certain duties and responsibilities to the tribe. Have you looked into that side of it?
A little bit. I mean, a little bit through my studies. Yeah. And the other thing is I know that many Native American groups see every aspect of nature as part of their relations. And so when you look at the world as an interrelated web, kind of what's happening now in science through ecology and systems thinking, right, where we have these interdependent living systems. When you look at the world as all like a part of you and you are a part of it, then I don't even understand how you could have the concept of this is mine, that's yours, stay away, because we're all a part of each other in that worldview. And then you have reverence and you have gratitude and reciprocity. That's what I understand, again, from some of my peripheral studies in Native American cultures. And so when you have reciprocity and gratitude, again, and there's no hierarchy. And so I think that I personally would love to see those values integrated into, other cultural systems. I feel like we're very far away from creating that globally, because I think part of the reasons you pointed out, the spiritual piece is missing. People are trying, organizations are trying to create it kind of from the outside in. And I think that what you pointed to is it needs to come from the inside out. It needs to, come from within you, from your, your belief systems, connecting to spirituality, looking at something deeper than materialism and materialistic human social systems.
Yeah. I've been reading this book by Shoshana Zuboff called Surveillance Capitalism. And it's really hard-hitting critique of what's happened to the internet age and Facebook and the way that she's taken Marx's ideas a bit further. She says these internet companies are now cashing in on everything we do. Your smartphone tracks which coffee you just bought, which shoes you're wearing, what lipstick you use, everything. And then they pop up with ads for it all. And it's become a sort of invasion of our privacy. So the idea of privacy is out the window. They want to know. Apparently, they even make smart beds, which are computerized, which track your movements in sleep. And they can manipulate the mattress so it's bumpier here, or and when you sign the deal, you buy the bed, you have to sign over all your rights over your personal body movements. They own that, and then they sell that on. Now, this is what surveillance capitalism is doing, which, in a sense, we still actually need the concept of privacy a bit to guard against these sort of voracious capitalists that want to know all our details so they can sell us. We've become inserfed, in effect.
Yeah.
The one area they haven't been able to plug into is our spirit. This is what kept Mandela going in prison. This is what kept St. Paul going when he was being persecuted. And
I feel like the transhumanist movement will try to go there because any movement that's trying to, in that movement, they're trying to figure out how to contain an individual's consciousness and plug it into a supercomputer. So I don't know how you can do that without finding the spirit.
Yeah, they're not going to succeed. They can't do it, but they're going to try. And the other thing is, this is all connected to military capitalism. It's the military that's pushing all this high-tech stuff and transhumanism. It comes out of robot soldiers. They're crazy, these people. They want to create endless wars to generate profits, because wars are the best profit for capitalism.
Mm-hmm.
This is one thing. I mean, Marx was right on some things. He didn't mention peace enough, in my view. I'm trying to upgrade his writings and fill in the missing pieces. In my commentary on Das Kapital, I'm putting in all the bits he should have said, including the links to the women's movement and the peace movement and so on.
Yeah.
But, so it's very important. Tell us briefly about what you do in theatre. How did you get into ritual theatre and drama therapy and all that stuff?
Well, I've been acting my whole life. I'd always had an interest in classical Greek theater, which I think is not uncommon, probably for, a lot of Western theater students. But it wasn't until I got to India and I was working with a group called Theater Me Too. And Theater Me Too is actually based in New York City, but they travel the world working with master teachers and different theatrical techniques. And so I went with them to Bangalore and we were training. We did a 3-week intensive training in South Indian classical dance forms like Kathakali, Mohiniyattam, Kalari Paitu, which is kind of a spiritual martial arts. I guess all martial arts has a spiritual component, and Carnatic singing. And so when I was there, that was the first time for me where it landed that spirituality and arts, creative expression are one and the same. And, Kathakali specifically is a tradition that goes back, reported allegedly 2,000 years plus, an unbroken lineage, right? And every aspect of that theatrical technique, it's like, you don't know where real life kind of ends and the theater begins, because it's all integrated into kind of the way of life. The cultural perspective is there's a flow that's happening. There's no hard lines. And so every single aspect of that tradition has a spiritual purpose, and it's meant to tell the story of the community to the community. And there's also aspects of it that are meant to invoke transcendence for both the people on the stage and the audience members. I guess traditionally it was performed from like 6 at night until 6 in the morning. And there's lots of drums and dancing. And so that for me felt like that, like, aha, like this is what a theater originally was. and continues obviously in some traditions, and that our tradition of like art for asceticism is sorely lacking, because this the spirit is not there. And Victor Turner, who's this late anthropologist, wrote this great book called From Ritual to Theater, and he really goes into kind of the Calvinist roots behind theater becoming an aesthetic commodity, that based in pleasure that only rich people could afford, versus like something for buying for the community. So yeah, that's I would say that's how I really started to get into ritual theater, and it felt like natural. It felt like the purest form of creative expression, and it feels like you're kind of both a conduit for the spiritual realm, and you're also in there's like this three-way connection happening between the spirit realm, you, and the audience. And I have to say, now that I've taken flamenco and I'm learning flamenco history, in a way it feels like that is another form of ritual theater. Although the energetic circle is a little bit different because it's more earthy than it is kind of celestial. And there's this great movie called Vengo, and in the beginning there's this performance of a flamenco artist and Sufi artists, and they've merged the two styles together, and you can actually see how they're actually kind of stem from that same core, that same ritual theater core.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I've spoken to you since, but I attended a conference online, an academic thing with the University of Western Georgia about cathartic history. Have I spoken to you about that since?
Very briefly, but not in depth.
Well, just to say, going back to your love of classical Greek drama, and that's how you got into it all. Since I'm in my Priest of Apollo guise, let me just share that this conference was brilliant. It was looking at catharsis through the Aristotle's Poetics, and the role of catharsis through tragedy. You get purification by the enactment of suffering, but you're watching it. You don't have to go through it yourself. That's the magic of theatre. I asked a load of questions like, is there a catharsis possible through comedy? And yes, apparently there's the lost work, Aristotle's lost book on comedy. It's real. There really was a sequel to the Poetics, but it's lost. And that figures in The Name of the Rose, the library that goes up in flames. They're supposed to have found a copy of it. That's Umberto Eco having fun because he knew about this. But so the conference was quite serious. It was looking at catharsis and then saying, well, how can we apply this to history? And as you know, I'm a historian of ideas and social history and the whole thing. So, and I set up this group, Historians for Peace, years ago in London, Philosophers and Historians for Peace. And so I've been working on what kind of cathartic, what sort of catharsis do we need to stop, to prevent the nuclear holocaust, the World War III, because it seems to me that we've misread our cathartic scripts. Most people have ended up thinking that violence is what brings catharsis.
Mm-hmm.
And that, the next war, the final war, World War III, that'll be the one when country X mercilessly slaughters country Y. Then everyone can live happily ever after that purificatory war. They said the same in World War II. You have to demonize the other, so the other becomes absolutely evil, and then you conquer them and defeat them. And all wars are premised on, I think it's a false theology. The Romans and the Jews did it at the time of Mary Magdalene and Christ. They had the war to end all wars. The Romans and the Jews hated each other and they went for it. And Josephus wrote the story and it was horrendous. What I'm looking for, maybe we can just end on this if you tell me your insight. How can we get people to think of a peace catharsis instead of a violent catharsis? because the QAnon types, they want more war catharsis. They want to destroy the evil cabal or whatever it is they're against. You know, politics has become this, you know, merciless destruction of the other guys. How can we use theatre or ritual or prayer or what, you know, to bring about the knowledge of a peace catharsis? Because I can't believe Mary Magdalene and Christ were going around teaching war is the way to bring enlightenment, were they?
I would say absolutely not, because isn't Jesus famous for saying the kingdom of God is within you? I mean, you know, there is this big problem with othering and the projecting of, you know, of all one's problems out on the rest of the world. So I'm inclined to say that, okay, I'm gonna say it this way. I had this great conversation with a friend of mine this morning, and I was saying that I remembered reading something within the last few years about, there was, and I apologize, I don't know the detail of the place within Africa. I don't remember the community, but it was a war-torn community, and there were a bunch of humanitarian groups that went in there to help this community. And some of the residents had said it was so weird because the psychologist came and they would whisk us away individually one by one into these like rooms, and we would have these kind of very hushed conversations. And it felt like a very shameful way to talk about, you know, our feelings or these things that happened. Whereas in our culture, when, you know, when somebody does something that harms someone else or that hurts the group, what we do is, you know, we get together as a community and we talk about it, or we give, you know, love and appreciation to the person that made the offense. And that for me really woke something up, where I was like, okay, in that action of us all coming together and us all really seeing one another, witnessing one another, you know, witnessing our pain, witnessing our, you know, just seeing the humanity in one another. The simple act of like looking in another person's eyes without trying to say anything is, it's both humanizing, and it also has this melting effect. It melts the barriers of otherness, where you get to see that, you know, that there's another human being sitting in front of you. So I feel on the one hand, the work is, everyone individually has to do their own inner work. And I also feel like the more that we can get together in groups and start listening to one another's stories, all of our differences will start to melt away. And we'll start to, you know, love one another or appreciate one another, even despite our differences. So that for me, any kind of like truth and reconciliation that's, you know, within a group setting, I think is the way to go.
That's wonderful. Thank you. In fact, we heard earlier on this Day of Women from a Palestinian woman in Gaza, and I asked her a few questions, and you know, it was recorded. And it just breaks my heart. These amazing people in Palestine and Gaza. This is a young woman. She has a degree. She speaks English brilliantly, and you know, I know Israeli young women that would love to have her in their home and to visit each other and to do this healing work. I
Yeah.
said the Truth and Reconciliation for the Middle East. When I went to Israel and Palestine, and I talked to spiritual elders, Sufis, Kabbalists, you know, in Tel Aviv and all over Israel and Palestine. But still today, the politicians won't let us do the work. You know, you need visas, and this poor woman can't even go to the West Bank, let alone, her dream is to go somewhere and be useful, somewhere like Turkey. She wants to escape because she's got such a good mind. She could be a university lecturer, right? So, yeah, and another person that was on the Zoom call with the group when we did our Women's Day thing is a South Indian woman who's been involved with restorative justice. And there's an international circle for restorative justice, which brings people into what you're talking about, this African village context. So the healing has to be a community thing. the person that's done the wrong, let's say he's done a rape or he's done something terrible, you know, has to sort of stand up and confess and apologize and then offer to make reparation to the person he's harmed or shamed. And then that person has to forgive him. You know, there has to be a restoring of the relationship, because everybody's done wrong. As St. Paul said, nobody is without sin. You know, that was his simple way of putting it. We all owe each other a profound apology, you know. Some of us more than others maybe, but so the planet somehow, and maybe this is a role women can play, have to come together in the circle, you know, for that conversation that can get the healing going. And I mean, I've been involved in peace research. I've seen they're using theatre in Latin America for truth and reconciliation commissions. What they're doing is going into villages where they've been disappeared and people have been tortured and captured and stuff, and they reenact the tragedy using theatre. So they become corpses. They have sheets with blood. They reenact the horror as a public theatre in the space where it happened, and then they do the healing. You know, they enact the process of repentance, forgiveness, and so on. That's a very powerful use of theatre for this kind of thing. I'd love to see that being done on the frontiers of Israel and Gaza and Palestine. And I think Mary Magdalene could play a role in that, because she's got a foot in both cultures. So maybe we can write a play about this and get it performed down there.
Sounds like a great plan in the making.
Yeah. And thanks again. I just want to end. So this is the journal we've just published. This is the Mary Magdalene Studies Association. I love this picture on the cover. This is by a 16th century Italian artist. And the journal's got quite a few of the old masters in. You know, so anyone that's interested in reclaiming the spiritual side of women's studies and Mary Magdalene studies, you know, it's a whole new field that we're pioneering. Nobody's thought of doing this before, because she wasn't important, but I think she was the apostle of all the apostles. She was the one that saw the resurrection. So that's why we'll keep going with it. Yeah. And thanks so much for all your help, Anna, and good luck with the PhD.
Yes, I need all the help I can get.
I'm sure you're raring to get back and do some more writing.
Yes. Well, thank you for having me, especially on this very auspicious day.
Yeah.
And I look forward to further conversations.
Excellent. Okay. Salam and shalom.